Welcome students to one of the most important sessions in your reading comprehension class. This is, I would by far say, one of the most important sessions simply because this is where I'm going to give you a completely different approach to solve reading comprehension questions. Okay, so just to give you a recap of what we have done till now. Okay, so what we have completed till now is your reading principles class. Okay, we have completed the reading principles session. Okay, and what we are going to see today is what I call as my RC rules class. Okay, so just to give you a quick recap of the way of the methodology which we are going to use for solving RC questions. So what we are trying to do, or what I'm trying to achieve with these sessions, is to give a mathematical approach. To give you a mathematical approach to solve English RC questions. Okay, that's what I'm trying to help you out with, guys. Okay, it's a very new, very interesting methodology. If you're able to apply it, you'll be very, very successful, okay, in your exam. Now, just to give you a recap, right, why this is essential, why it is very important. What do we typically do in math questions? The way we solve math question is, first we understand the question. Okay, so what we do is we understand the question. After we understand the question, what do we do? Next step is basically we apply a set of formulas. Okay, we apply formula. Okay, and then we apply the formula and get the answer. Okay, and then we pick the right answer choice. This is a methodology which we follow. Okay, so we understand the question, apply the formula and get the answer, and pick the right answer choice. This is how we solve mathematics question. But if you look at English questions, right, English question is slightly different. Okay, because you have a passage. So typically what happens, the challenges which you face. Okay, we've discussed this in our earlier session, the last session especially, where we saw certain challenges with respect to RC questions. So if you look at RC questions, right, first it's very difficult to understand the passage. So understanding the passage is a challenge. Okay, understanding the passage is a challenge. That's the first problem we have. The next thing is, after we understand the passage, the next thing is we do not know how to formulate the answer. Okay, how to formulating the answer is tricky. Okay, so first is, suppose let's say you have a very cryptic passage, then it becomes very, very challenging to understand the passage. Okay, let's assume you've understood the passage. It's very difficult to formulate the answer. So most of the times what do? We look at the answer choices and try to formulate the answer. Or we are trying to guess the answer from the answer choice. Now go back to your mathematics question, right? Any math question. We never look at the answer choice and guess what the answer is. Typically we try to solve it and then pick the right answer choice. But we never do, okay, is answer option A or B? A is right, we think about it, nothing like that. Okay, we can substitute. We can always substitute answer option A in the question and do it. Okay, but we never try to guess what the answer is. Okay, we never try to understand the answer and pick the answer choice. Whereas here, the formulating the answer is very tricky. And then the final challenge with respect to RC is you have very tricky answer choices. Tricky/close answer choices. These are three problems. These are the major issues which we face with respect to RCs. And we did one simple test also last class, right, where we picked up one particular passage. In the last session, we picked up one particular passage. You guys solved it, and you were finding a lot of problems. And these are the typical three problems I've seen with all my students. Okay, understanding the passage, formulating the answer is very tricky, and the answer choices are pretty close. So what we discussed was, okay, fine, understanding the passage is a challenge. Okay, that is why we have the reading principles class. Okay, the reading principles class basically helps you to understand the passage. Okay, it helps you to figure out what is really very important while answering the question. The objective of this particular session, the reading principles class, was to pick up that 20% of the passage. The whole idea was to pick up 20% of the passage, which will help us to answer 80% of the questions. Okay, it was basically helping us to identify that 20% of the passage, which will help us to answer 80% of the questions. Now that we know that, okay, fair enough, we know that this 20% is going to help us answer 80% of the questions. Now we need to formulate the answer, and then we need to find out whenever we're stuck between two answer choices, how do I pick the right answer choice? How do you eliminate all these tricky answer choices and pick the right one? To achieve these two is what I have my RC rules class. Okay, now the objective of RC rule session, okay, which we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 hours. The objective of RC rules class is very simple. A is to formulate the answer. Okay, it is to formulate the answer. Okay, and then after formulate the answer, it will help you to pick the correct answer choice. It will help you to pick the correct answer choice. These are two objectives of RC rules class. Most of the times, moment you formulate the answer, you will get the right answer choice. But sometimes there will be some tricky things which these examination guys will play around. Okay, they'll put some very tricky answer choices. They will try to fool us, but we will outsmart them by picking the right answer choice. Okay, that's the objective of RC rules class. Okay, and the way I've modeled this entire session is very similar, or it is very similar to the way you solve mathematics question. Okay, so if I look at a math question, right, what do? Okay, so math question, first you categorize the question, right? Okay, so you categorize the question. What do you mean by categorize the question? Okay, you will first identify whether it's an algebra question or an arithmetic question. Okay, or it is a, let's say, geometry question. Okay, or it could be, let's say, permutation and combination. Some category, right? Permutation and combination. So the first thing you will do is, before you apply the formula, right, you should know what formula to apply. For that, you need to categorize. So step one is, you'll always, what do you typically do in math questions? So step one, you categorize the question. Okay, you will try to identify what category it belongs to. Okay, this is an algebra question and it's based on quadratic equations. That is step one. After you categorize the question, what do you do? Step two. Step two is you apply the formula. You apply the formula and you get the answer. That's it. These are two steps you will follow in any mathematics question. You will apply the formula and you will get the answer. You don't do anything beyond this. Okay, categorize, apply the formula. Very similar process we're going to do in RCs. Very similar process. Okay, the whole idea is for, see, the way when I was solving questions and when I was interacting with students, they were really finding difficult to find a rational way to get the answer right. Okay, so rationally, how do I pick the right answer choice? Because the entire subject looks pretty irrational. Okay, it looks as if very subjective. You might feel A is the answer, he might feel B is the answer, all those stories. So I'm going to give you a very rational approach or a mathematical approach to solve English questions. Okay, so first thing is, before we start answering the different types of questions, etc., I'll explain the process which you are following. What is the process I am trying to follow for solving English questions or RC questions? So again, it's a three-step process. Okay, it is clearly a three-step process. Okay, step one. Okay, I will teach you how to categorize the question. So first, step one is going to be categorize. Okay, how do I categorize this question? How do I know that this question belongs to a particular category? Okay, so step one, categorize. Okay, that's what I'm going to teach you. Step two, formulate the answer. How to formulate the correct answer choice. Okay, I want you to formulate the answer choice. I don't want you to guess what the answer is. We will try to guess the answer in certain categories, but not for all categories. That's step two. Step three is an additional step compared to mathematics. See, in mathematics, you have step one and step two. Categorize, apply the formula, you'll get the answer, and there'll be one answer choice. You don't have to eliminate any answer choice at all. You don't have to eliminate any answer choice. There won't be any tricky answers. You apply the formula properly, you will get the answer. So there's no concept of getting stuck between two answer choices. So here, there's no concept of getting stuck between two answer choices. Okay, you'll never have this choice at all. You'll always pick the right answer choice. Either you'll get the wrong, either you'll pick the right answer choice, or there will be a trap which will be laid and you'll pick the wrong answer. There's no, okay, there's no way you'll say, I'm stuck between A and B, I'm going to pick the answer, unless otherwise you're trying to guess what the answer is looking at the answer choice. Okay, so there are some interesting folks who say that, okay, fewer the number of decimals, the better the answer choice. Okay, so they start looking at the answer choice, more number of decimals, then they'll knock the answer choice. Then there are two answer choices which have no decimals. So what do I choose? Only in that scenario, only in those scenarios, you'll get stuck between two answer choices. Otherwise, math is pretty straightforward. But in RCs, we have one step further. You categorize, you formulate. After that, okay, how do you eliminate the traps? Okay, how do you eliminate the traps? Okay, how do you eliminate all the traps? Okay, this is a three-step process which I'm going to follow while solving RC questions. So first, I'm going to categorize. Next, I'm going to formulate the answer. For every category, I'm going to give you an algorithm or a working methodology. Okay, I'm going to give you an algorithm or a working methodology to answer the question. Okay, I'm going to give you an algorithm or a working methodology to answer each category. Okay, and then eliminate the traps. How do we eliminate the traps? We will use the rules. The rules are basically the do's / don'ts. Okay, so these are 3 steps, and I'll teach you some categorization process also. Okay, so any question, any RC question, right, you're going to follow this 3-step process. First is categorize using the categorization principles I'm going to teach you. Step 2, we will formulate the answer. How do you formulate? For that, we have a set of algorithms, working methodology, process available. I will teach you that also. And step 3, you need to eliminate the traps. Okay, how do you eliminate the traps? You eliminate the traps using the rules, okay, which I'm going to give you.